Hi everyone, it's Gayle again, and little Oliver here want to join me for Facebook Live, at least for the first few minutes. Anyway, I'm going to be changing directions today. What I'd like to do is share some of my story. Some of you know me a little bit online or maybe even in person, and some of you know parts of my story. Some of you may have listened to an interview I did with David Westerman, one of the administrators of this group, actually the founder of this group. You'd have to scroll pretty far down to get it. Maybe I'll post a link up here near this video. But anyway, I did want to share a little bit of my story as kind of a way of letting you know why I'm here and what I want to share and what I think I have to offer. So, trying to make a really long story short, my son Kyle has autism and he's 33 years old, and I also have a brother Philip who is very, very similar to my son, and he is getting ready to turn 57 in a few weeks. And so autism is pretty much in my veins. It's probably in my genes too. But I've grown up with autism in a way. My brother grew up living in an institution since about the time that he was maybe 5 years old, and that's a whole other story. But what I wanted to share with you was how I came to understand and see something really big that had a very deep and kind of big personal impact for me on this journey, and that was really just a couple of years ago. So if you're in this group, you are familiar with maybe the three principles understanding, or maybe you're trying to figure out what is that three principle understanding that people keep referring to, and hopefully that will get a little bit more clear if you hang out here a little bit longer. But basically it refers to an inside-out experience of life. It refers to the fact that our experience of life is created within by our thoughts and not by the circumstances around us. No matter how, and hi, I think that was David, no matter how difficult and maybe horrendous at times those experiences around, those things that happen around us look, it is us that is generating this, our experience and our reality. I'm making it really brief here. And the other part of it has to do with our innate well-being and our innate psychological health. That this is something we're born with. That little seed inside, that little soul that we're all born with, is always still there, no matter what we're going through or no matter what feelings and thoughts we have. It just gets covered up with a lot of gunk, and we forget it's sitting below the surface. So that's a really short explanation of this, what I would call this understanding. But what I'd like to share is how it impacted me just a couple of years ago. Kyle was going through a really difficult period of time that he goes through from time to time. He goes through cycles, kind of like an add-on to his autism. And he sort of becomes almost like a different person. He's very upset and agitated and stressed, and he can't eat and he can't function, and he's hitting his head, and he has to wear a helmet full time. And it lasts for 2 weeks, and then it goes away for 2 weeks, and then it comes back. So that's a very short version. And I was taking a little course on the Inside Out Understanding that I had just recently come in contact with. Even though I had gone through a pretty extensive coach training, it was completely different than this Inside Out Understanding. And I was taking this course, and I happened to have a couple of private conversations with the person leading the course. And I was really going through just this difficult time, figuring out what to do. I was pretty upset and pretty, I was suffering. I guess you could say I was suffering. And in the course of this conversation, talking about well-being and where it really lies in me and in my son, and how could he still have well-being when he was going through this horrendous cycle, and understanding that my suffering wasn't coming from him. And that was really big. And at first it was sort of like, what? You know, if he wasn't going through this, I wouldn't be suffering. And I have to figure out how to help him. And what can I do? And he's so hard to take care of like this, and he has no life. And I had this whole story that went with these cycles. And what got kind of cracked open in these conversations that I had with this person was that my story wasn't true. The story that I had about what was going on with Kyle wasn't true. What was going on with Kyle was going on with Kyle. But the rest of it was added on by me. And not purposely, you know, it's just how human beings function. We have thoughts about things that we don't necessarily choose. We could choose whether to act or not act, but I don't think we necessarily choose what comes into our mind. We get to choose what we attach to. But it's a little bit hard to explain because honestly, after I got off the phone from the first conversation I had with this person, I felt like this big weight had been lifted off the top of my head. And I honestly didn't really understand how it happened. So it's very hard for me to explain anything along those lines when I share the story. But what I will say is that I had a new view of the situation, and my suffering fell away. It was pretty dramatic. Like, you may not have been able to see it on the outside, but on the inside I felt calmer. And I was also able to see how Kyle was doing quite a few things to take care of himself during these cycles. One of them was to actually just go to bed for a period of time and just want to shut out the entire world. The other one also was that he didn't want us to take his helmet off because I think he knew it was keeping him safe. And if you would go to take it off, he would really resist that. And there were a whole lot of other things I could see in what he was doing, that he was taking care in the best way that he knew how. And for me, once my suffering kind of dropped away, it didn't mean that I didn't want to find something to help these cycles, something to keep these cycles from happening. It didn't mean that I loved the cycles, but it took away an element of strain, and it allowed me to see much more clearly what might be next for me to do. It was kind of like some of the clouds cleared away, and I had some insights on, okay, what would be the next step? Where do I want to go? And a whole lot of things happened after that. But the other thing I could see, the well-being piece and the idea that inside he was still okay. He still had this innate well-being. I'm still learning how to get that. And I'm still starting to see it more and more. And I'm still, but I kind of got a little piece of it that said, despite all this stuff that's going on the outside with him, there's that core, that soul that is still okay and that is still safe and that is resilient And he always bounces back amazingly. He always bounces back from these cycles, and that he would bounce back again. And I just started to understand it differently. And I also started to understand that things were gonna, the ebb and flow of life and the ebb and flow of our feelings and our emotions, and that I didn't have to work really hard to fix what I was going through. I didn't have to necessarily accept or be at peace with or do anything to fix myself in relation to how I was feeling about these cycles. But amazingly, after these conversations, I felt better. I saw things and understood things a little bit differently and a little bit more clearly. I'm not sure if this is making sense to everybody, but it's really an understanding that seems to help you navigate through life and through relationships a little better and a little more comfortably and a little more peacefully. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have the ups and downs, but once you see that you don't have to fix all that, and you don't have to fix your child for you to feel good, even if you get just a little tiny little glimpse of that, at least for me, what I've experienced is it tends to make a difference. It tends to make a difference in how I walk through life. So it's kind of about understanding. It is about understanding. And what I'm hoping to do with this group is bring the degree of understanding that I have here, so that perhaps you can see something just a little bit different in your own life. Anyway, that's it for today. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to post them, or feel free to send me a private message. And if you would ever like to have a chat on what the heck does all this mean? What are you talking about when you're talking about principles and understanding? I'm here for that, and I would love to talk about it. I just really want to make a difference for you all, if I can. And since I've been walking this walk for a really long time, and I've seen something really big in the last couple of years, I'm here to share it. So thanks for listening, and I'm going to be back tomorrow, and let's connect. Bye.